What's good, y'all? Welcome back. How you guys doing? How are you guys doing? We're back with how do Formula One teams make their money. So we are going to go back to basics a tad bit. Finna learn how some of these teams make their money. I think I kind of have learned how to make their money. Obviously through winning, the owners, investments, and all of that. So this is probably just going to tell us the major overview on what they do and how they make your money. I was supposed to drop this yesterday, but I only managed to get one, and it should be two videos today. But anyway, let's go ahead and get with the video. How do Formula One teams make their money? Let's get started.
All know the saying, money makes the world go round.
That's right.
Well, in Formula One, the story is no different. Most sports like football, rugby, or basketball are much easier to have success in without needing lots of money, but Formula One and motorsport as a whole is completely the opposite. While other sports could be seen as pay to win, Formula One is instead pay to play, compete in the first place. This means when looking at the balance sheets of Formula One, there are a lot of zeros. In 2019, Formula One made a revenue of $2.02 billion.
Damn!
While the highest paid drivers cash in up to £40 million a year, putting them up there with some of the highest paid athletes in the world. And this trend is not slowing down, with karting now costing six figures in many cases. And this is reflected by the amount of pay drivers that have entered the sport in recent years. But enough complaining about pay drivers for now, this video is about the teams. So Formula One isn't just a business, it is a massive billion-dollar industry that employs tens of thousands of people, and the teams are the businesses within the industry that keep the sport going, much like Google and Apple are to the tech industry. And so, like any business, the aim is to make profit, apart from charities and other non-profits, but that's irrelevant. So, how do Formula One teams make money?
Well, let's find out.
Do they even make a profit at all? Stick around for the next 10 minutes or so as I dive into exactly that. Just a little disclaimer, all figures I'll be using in this video are from 2019 because the official figures from 2020 haven't been published yet, and because of the pandemic, those figures wouldn't really be representative anyway.
True.
Well, like any business, to talk about profits, you gotta talk about the costs and revenues for that business. Costs being how much the business spends, and revenue being how much the business earns.
Yep.
And so, to make
School
profit,
101,
you need to be
Economics
earning more than you
101.
spend, or in other words,
Economics
revenue needs
101.
to be higher than your costs.
All right.
And with Formula One teams, there are lots of different things that go into the costs and revenues, some you probably didn't even know about. So to begin with, let's dive into the costs of a Formula One team, what they spend their money on. Well, the costs can be split into four main categories: research and development, salaries, production, and operations. So, research and development, or otherwise known as R&D, consists of things like wind tunnel testing, track testing, and other forms of testing components to make sure they perform their function.
Never heard of that.
Salaries are pretty self-explanatory.
Wind tunnel
consist of
testing.
paying the team's staff, like the marketing team for example.
Never heard of that.
Paying the drivers, so, Lewis Hamilton's 40 million quid paycheck.
That's crazy.
And paying team directors like Toto
But
Wolff,
that's what happens when you're great at what you do, man. You're gonna get that. You're gonna get that cash.
Production costs for the team involve all the manufacturing of new parts, the purchasing of new components, and either the building or buying of the engine, which can cost upwards of £10 million by itself. And then the final part is the operations, which concerns things like logistics and travel, entertainment for clients, moving everything by freight to long-distance races like Singapore, IT and tech costs, costs of running the factory, professional services like marketing or things like that, and funnily enough, the cost of fuel surprisingly adds up over a season too. And so, if I add various figures to these areas, we can start to see how much the average team spends over a season.
Oh my fucking gosh. That's like over 100 million. That's like over 100 million. Holy, that's like 83 million combined, and then I don't know if I'm doing math, so it's over 100 million. My gosh. That's every year? Woo, sheesh.
Start to see how much the average team spends over a season. In this hypothetical example, the team spends £158 million over the length of a season. Now, remember that number, because it's kind of important.
158.
Right, so with that
Guys,
£158
remember
million of mind,
158. Write it
let's
down.
flip the coin and have a look at how an F1 team earns money and generates a revenue. Now, quick disclaimer, this isn't as standard for all teams, meaning some teams make money in different ways to others, but I'll explain. Well, just like the costs, the revenue can be split into 3 or 4 categories depending on the team. Firstly, there's FOM payments, sponsors, investment, and finally, driver-linked income.
See, I was right with the
Let's begin with the most significant one, FOM payments.
What the hell is that?
For those that don't know, FOM stands for Formula One Management.
Oh, okay.
To explain how F1 teams are paid by F1, I gotta really split it into 5 columns. So the first column is 36 million quid to every team that has been classified for over 2 seasons. This is known as the column 1 payment, and every single team receives this. Then in the second column is the prize money based on where the team finished the season before. So, for example, Mercedes received $61 million for winning the title, while Williams received just $13 million.
So that's why so everybody gets the same amount to start the year off, which is pretty cool. But then you have to still perform. You still got to show out. You know what I mean? You still have to perform and show out. And look at Williams. They made $13 million compared to Mercedes making $61 million. Golly. I mean, you gotta be great. You gotta be good at what you do. You know what I mean?
Last. Everything up till now seems pretty fair.
Everybody
right?
gets the same amount.
Well, we aren't done yet. The third column is known as the LST, or long-standing team, basically known as the Ferrari budget because it's only given to them. And it's a whopping $68 million, more than Mercedes received for winning the title. On top of this is the CCB, or Constructors' Championship Bonus, which is a $35 million payment to Ferrari, Mercedes, Red Bull and McLaren for basically winning a load of titles. And finally, there are a couple of other payments, such as $10 million to Williams as a heritage payment, similar to Ferrari,
That's pretty
$35
cool.
million to Red Bull for signing the Concord Agreement first, and $35 million to Mercedes for living up to their promise of winning 2 titles. And breathe. Pretty messed up system.
God, yeah.
Well, for those interested, here is how it all stacks up.
Look how much Ferrari gets off of FOM payments.
But this is only one piece
compared
of the
to
puzzle
everybody
when it comes
else.
to earnings.
Especially
The
for
next
like
is
the lower
sponsors. I'm sure
teams.
most people understand how they work, but basically a company like Petronas goes to a team like Mercedes and says, I want to be on your car so we can advertise ourselves. And Mercedes say, okay great, that'll be $70 million. Job done. That's in very simple terms, but on average, a team has maybe 15 to 25 sponsors who all pay a sum of money to the team to place their logo on the car. And obviously, the better performing teams will have more sponsors because they get more airtime on TV and are more marketable. And it's especially true the other way round. If a team or driver has a terrible reputation, sponsors won't go near them. So, the next form of earning for teams comes as investment from either a parent company or shareholders, where basically, let's say Daimler, want Mercedes to do better in F1, so they give them $80 million per season. This is similar for every team, but obviously some can afford to invest more than others. So, while in 2018 Mercedes got $80 million a year, Racing Point only got $25 million. And for many teams, this takes up at least a quarter of all revenue.
But is that the reason why teams like Mercedes are so freaking dominant, Mercedes and Ferrari? Because they're getting like almost twice as much as the lower teams. But I did see that they are adding like a salary cap or whatever. But I mean, that's probably why we constantly see, Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull, whatever, constantly winning things compared to like the lower teams. Because they get so much money off of how they perform and where they finish. They can use that money to, make themselves better, while the other teams, like Williams, Haas, whatever, getting like 10, 12 million. And then it's like, they can't try to go crazy like Ferrari and them. And then, when you suck it, how many sponsors are gonna, like mess with you? Like if you constantly coming in 18th, P18, P19, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, So I mean, it does suck that the lower, like the lower teams can't really perform as well as the top teams. But hopefully, with the new salary cap next year, it should be very very helpful for these teams.
Teams earn, so it's easy to see why a team like Williams are bound to struggle.
Yeah,
And finally, the last form is driver-linked income, which is basically when a driver pays the team a sum of money to drive the car, such as Lance Stroll, who paid Williams $30 million in 2017 to drive the car. But obviously, this only really takes place in teams lower down the grid who are desperate to get more revenue.
yeah,
Right, so that's all the possible
that
ways that a
sucks.
team can earn money. So let's put it into our hypothetical example. So let's say that our team gets £65 million in FOM payments, £30 million in investment, £50 million from sponsors, and £20 million from driver-linked
That's not
income.
bad.
That comes out to
I mean,
£165
you make a
million
profit,
in total revenue.
make profit.
So then, in our hypothetical example, the team would make a £7 million profit. Well, that's basically how an F1 team makes money, but why not look at the reigning champions Mercedes and see how they stack up? Right, so in 2019, Mercedes spent around $425 million through R&D, manufacturing, testing, Lewis's paycheck, and when looking at their income, it's broken down as follows. They received $180 million from the FOM, an $80 million payment from Daimler, and a $160 million payment from sponsors
Oh
and
my
tech
god.
partners. So, doing the maths, in 2019, Mercedes actually made a loss of
Yeah,
$5
they actually
million,
lost 5 million.
approximately, give or take a few $100,000. And looking at the grid as a whole, it's actually very interesting. Every team bar 2 break even, meaning
So Williams lost 25 million. That's not good. I focus on Williams because I feel bad for Williams. I want them to do good. Everybody else at least broke even, except for Mercedes and Williams. Just look at this: 125 to 150 to 425 and 420. That's like $300 difference.
the costs are the same as the revenue. Obviously, these are rough estimates and expect a small loss or a small gain either way, but the point is, virtually every team uses all their resources to the max,
Yeah,
which does make a lot of sense, and
I
here's
mean you
why.
got to, right?
Formula One is used by car companies not necessarily to make profit, but instead as a marketing platform to the world to show that their road cars are the best. So, for teams like Mercedes, Renault, Ferrari, etc., Formula One brings those companies enormous profits indirectly if someone that likes or watches F1 buys one of their cars. So, it really doesn't matter if they aren't making a profit at the end of the day. And after all, if you are making a profit, it shows you have more potential resources to
Yeah,
improve the
I
performance
was
of the
trying to say
car,
that's the goal
which,
to make a
after all,
profit.
is the most important
That's the
thing.
goal to make profit every
But
year.
next season, the whole financial landscape of Formula One is going to change dramatically because of the budget cap.
Yeah, see, I
I've
was right.
spoken
Yeah,
about
yeah,
this
yeah.
many times in other videos, but
Hey, shout out to the person who did mention about the whole salary cap or whatever, man, the budget cap.
basically what it is a maximum amount the teams can spend, which will be set at $145 million. So for any team that spends more than $145 million now, they will need to be much more efficient with how they spend their money. This will no doubt affect teams like Mercedes,
Yeah,
Red Bull and Ferrari the most, and the main aim is to create a more level playing field, which I'm all for.
yeah, same
Now you
here.
might be wondering,
Same here. Hey, I'm all for that. I'm all for that. Teams, you know what I mean? I'm all for that. I'm not trying to see Mercedes winning freaking 15 years in a row just dominating. I think it's boring after like the second, third year. You know what I mean? Maybe Haas steps up next year. Maybe Alfa Romero steps up. Williams, you know what I mean? Like Mercedes, like Ferrari, like just different winners. It's gonna be real interesting though. It's gonna be real interesting, especially for the top teams, to see how they spend that money, especially with the budget. Like they can't go crazy now. I mean, they can't go crazy.
every team's budget in 2019 was above $145 million, which is absolutely true. But because of the effect of the pandemic, many teams' budgets have fallen quite a lot.
Yeah,
Now, I'm sure some teams will find loopholes around the regs, but there is no doubt that it's a good thing for Formula One. So that's a short glimpse into how Formula One teams make money and run as a business. And it just shows how efficient some of the lower teams like AlphaTauri are. And it just puts into context how incredible things like Pierre Gasly's win in Monza was.
Pierre Gasly.
Well, if you enjoyed this new stuff,
Hey, great video, man. Shout out to him. Pit stop. Shouts to him, man. Great video. Learned a lot. Learned a lot again. Like I said, we're continuously learning. Anyway, you guys don't forget to like and sub. Coming up later, guys. Thoughts and reactions. I'll see you guys later.